Welcome, everybody, to Let's Talk Computer Science, a podcast dedicating to talking about the past, present, and future of computer science in schools. This podcast is made possible by our friends at Rex Academy. Be sure to check out their amazing computer science platform, including courses on cybersecurity and AI, which, of course, has been in the news a lot lately. Don't have a teacher? Not a problem. Rex is now providing instructors as part of their platform, so be sure to check them out at rex.academy. And today, I'm excited to have on the podcast Fran Bromley-Norwood. She is a computer science and cybersecurity administrator in Clark County School District in Nevada, a little tiny district, I hear, only about the fifth largest in the country. She has the privilege of sharing her knowledge of computer science and cybersecurity with students, teachers, administrators, industry professionals all over there in Las Vegas. She actually started a comp sci program, CTE program of study at the high school there in North Las Vegas, and then started a cybersecurity CTE program of study at the same high school shortly after. So been working a lot in this area. Fran's overall goal is to encourage and prepare educators and students to be career ready for industry positions. She's won numerous awards. She's well schooled in this. And I just found out, I was looking at her bio, and in July of this year of 2023, Fran will be the vice president of the Engineering and Technology Education Division within the Association for Career and Technical Education. Fran, I can't think of anyone more qualified to be my first guest on the Let's Talk Computer Science podcast. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored.
So a little bit about your role. So you've seen a lot in computer science over the time. What got you involved? Let's back up. Let's do your what should we call it? Your life's journey, your career start, your backstory. What got you started in computer science? What made you interested in it?
Well, it's kind of funny. So in my previous life, I was a broadcast journalist because I wanted people to be educated about information. And unfortunately, when that became sensationalism, I decided I wanted to be in the classroom because I would educate people for real. So my first 20 years of education was actually at the elementary level. And while I was in the elementary level, I realized obviously technology was evolving. And I wanted to make sure that students were aware of how to make sure that they had the technology that they needed in order to be successful as they got older. So after 20 years in elementary, I decided to grow up, and I had self-taught myself, took some classes and learned about computer science, and found out that the high school where the elementary students that I had taught in North Las Vegas were going to be in high school, they were looking to start a program of study in computer science. I said, well, that's ironic because I taught myself computer science, took some college courses, got myself endorsed with the state, and I'm qualified to teach computer science. So I went to that high school, was able to be the first person to initiate the computer science program of study there for CTE. At the end of that year, I was introduced to cybersecurity. And the following year, I was able to convince 12 students that they should come in at 6 a.m. every morning to learn about cybersecurity also, because it was not something that the school was familiar with. And that was in May when I found out about it. So I started that process. And ever since then, I've been working with computer science and cybersecurity at the CTE level. And now I have the privilege of working at the K-12 level. So I get to work with everyone on computer science, which of course has cybersecurity embedded in our standards.
You are a true mountain mover if you can convince kids to show up at 6 a.m. to talk and discuss cybersecurity, because I don't know that we could even get cybersecurity professionals to do that these days. Well, that's amazing. So we're talking a little bit about past, present, and future in this podcast. So let's go back to the past. Tell me about what was computer science when you started? I have my recollections because I was in the classroom and doing some of this. And I'm going to tell you 2002, 3 was kind of when I was really embedded in it. And that's when I was like, maybe this internet thing isn't going to go away anytime soon. What were some of the programs you were doing back when you first got started?
Well, certainly, obviously, way back in the day of, knowing about Cobalt and Fortran and, BASIC and, and then gradually moving through the more up-to-date versions. Our CTE programs of study initiated when I started at that point with C++ and Java. And so, again, became more familiar with those languages, which were considerably much more up to date at the time than the ones I was doing before, but was really excited to learn the programming languages, and also was excited to see my students learning about the programming languages and how it would be able to take them into the future. And then when I was introduced to that cybersecurity piece at the end of the first year of me teaching computer science, I was hooked. And then the streak became.
So let's talk a little bit about the students. So this is of course, computer science in the United States. We've been woefully kind of supplying students into these positions across industry. So a lot of them, of course, coming overseas, and it's great. We like to have a melting pot of people in all of these jobs. However, I think schools sometimes aren't. We just don't have enough people to really supply them. So, what do you see are like the successes, but also the challenges maybe that you've encountered there at Clark County in terms of getting kids interested in the program, or what's it looking like? What's the state of the program at this moment in terms of computer science?
Well, here's what I can tell you. So, I would like to definitely attribute a lot of my supports and knowledge and contributing factors to this at the state level. We have really supportive state legislators, but also this people at the state level who were assigned as the computer science representation at Department of Ed. I know, unfortunately, that many states don't have that.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, it has made a significant difference. So when I became part of this picture, I was able to jump right in and support the standards writing to kind of see whether or not students would be interested in things that we were trying to include in that process. So the successes are that there's a CTE program of study in computer science, there's a CTE program of study in cybersecurity, and there's K-12 computer science laws, regulations, and guidelines that all K-12 students are involved in. So we have standards for our kindergartners all the way up to graduation. We have a graduation requirement course that we make sure that students take that includes computer science and applications. So they're
Nice.
familiar with how to go into the adult world. And then we also have an opportunity that just occurred that it had been written, but it just officially went into play July 1st, that every single high school in the state is required to offer a full year computer science course to students who may not necessarily have a CTE program of study, but that the course is available to see whether or not they have interest in that and to be able to learn more.
That is awesome. What about what are some of the challenges that you've seen though too? Also, is it do you feel like enrollment? Is it I know that like in my case, I have three girls, so I'm always like very much trying to push to get them involved in it, but I still see them as male dominated courses. And I think that trend starts around middle school. But what do you see are some of the challenges around that or just in general around the program itself?
So so there's like the pros and the cons. So in
Right.
terms of the pros, this new introduction of requiring K-5 to have computer science in their schools, which started in 2020. Great year to have that start.
Hey, yeah,
Um,
timing's not so
uh,
great there, but
but but the introduction to computer science to that age group has definitely influenced significantly more on for females to be able to be interested in computer science as they go forward. So I can totally understand that prior to that introduction in the at the elementary level, middle school girls were certainly not necessarily excited that they were required to take a high school graduation requirement course. Um, to do it, and if it was a semester long, and so when they chose to either continue with it because they had interest and have other courses, or they decided I fulfilled my requirement, I'm not interested. By starting them as young as kindergarten and working their way up, I have found a significant increase in the number of students that have an interest in computer science and cybersecurity. The downfall, of course, and we kind of mentioned this before, is having educators that are endorsed and properly trained
yes.
to be able to teach the courses so that those students can learn alongside them sometimes, but at least have the excitement. So there are several different things within the state where we have endorsement opportunities at the CTE level, at the K-12 level, so that teachers have the opportunity to learn more about computer science, get endorsed properly for computer science, and be able to teach those students the skills and the excitement that they have, which hopefully brings up the excitement in those students as well. So our lack of educators, unfortunately, is where we struggle the most. But we're trying to get more involved in the opportunity to learn more about it too.
What a great thing though to have a state that's really like put their put this behind them and saying like we're going to actually say that this has to be a requirement because you're right. I think the exposure is such an important thing at those early ages. A lot of kids don't, if they're given the option, they may say, "Well, that's not my thing," or "It's a lot of boys in that class, so I'm not going to take it." So again, having opportunities for all kids early on, and then of course making it a dedicated requirement through high school is a rare thing. But then you bring up a great point, and that is, I want to say last year, or no, it was 2021. I think there was something like 80 teachers certified in computer science and like I can't remember what region it was, but it was a region that had like, I don't know how many students they had served, but it was basically saying like, we're so woefully underprepared for this in terms of teachers. So, which actually ties into a lot of the hosts of this, of course, podcast. Rex Academy is one of the things they're tackling is that a challenge. Like, how can we maybe get teachers in there or get them quickly certified? So I love that, first of all, that Nevada has really put their heart in this and said, we need to make this a priority. And now you're right. Let's get more teachers involved. Because I think, do you think there's some intimidation factor? I mean, I know computer science, coding, people think, and you and I were talking about, you talk about Fortran or Java and C++ and all these other things. Like, is there some intimidation? Like, well, I can't really learn that. But I also like that you just said, yeah, maybe learn alongside a student isn't necessarily a bad thing either. What are your thoughts around that?
For teachers to be able to be endorsed within the state, they take courses. So there's concepts of computer science, which is basically introducing those teachers who may have not had any tech familiarity to the point where they felt comfortable teaching. But this was now a new introduction for them to be able to learn more about computer science and then learning about computers, applications, and kind of feeling more comfortable with that learning process and then learning programming languages. So there's definitely, I think initially that those who have not necessarily connected with technology before in such a succinct way have definitely felt that they were not necessarily prepared. But after they take the required courses and after they have the opportunity to learn about the methods of teaching computer science, they feel significantly more comfortable. And there are so many more opportunities for them to be able to do that, in addition to maybe whatever their core subject is that they were teaching before.
Yeah, I think that helps that comfort level. I think that's a big part of it, right? As a teacher, you want to have some level of comfort and knowledge in the program or what you're actually running. But I also like the idea again of saying like, we can make this student led and have the students really, my job as a teacher is to kind of give you some skills and some of the ideas of where to go, but also the students can help kind of design their own instruction in some senses in terms of what they're putting out there. Which gets me to kind of this next part, which is the future of computer science. And I think, I mean, I'd be remiss if I don't mention the elephant in the room, which is AI and Chat GPT. And yeah, I'm joking now that it's like a drinking game. Every time someone says it, you have to, I've been at 2 conferences in the last 2 weeks and it's like every other session, somebody mentioned something about it. So with that in mind, and the kind of the back of your mind, what do you think is the future of computer science in terms of with AI really entering the mix even heavier than it has, let's say, even in the last couple of years? I know it's been around kind of on the periphery, but I feel like now it's like front and center. What are your thoughts around that? Around that?
Well, to be totally honest with you, I think it's great that students have an opportunity to be able to work within an AI environment, even when they're not necessarily connected to computer science class or like something that they have gone forward, right? I don't think that they realized how much they would be connecting to AI. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's a really great opportunity for students to understand how that process works, what it looks like, and of course their embeddedness of like, how do you write an essay, how do you do this, how do you do that, and of course the chat, CPT is replying with it. But the primary thing that I think is significantly important is also the understanding that it is AI. And
Yeah.
I think the embedding of the knowledge for that is significantly important because, as we know, many people have had interactions with individuals that they thought were in a positive light for them, and as a result unfortunately have been taken advantage of, and all other things that would not necessarily come in a positive light. As a result of that, being familiar with AI and as well as being able to utilize it within their own environment is a great opportunity. The unfortunate part is you also kind of need to know whether or not your interactions are positive or negative.
Right. I think this is a whole nother layer of digital citizenship that starts again when you were talking about at the kindergarten level, really about how do we interact with AI? What are the outputs of that? And then of course there's always the quick knee jerk reaction, which is like, well, this is cheating right away. And maybe it redefines that. I remember when Google came out, remember the Google search engine. I mean, there were search engines before that some of our listeners may remember, like Dogpile and see what some of the Alta Vista or some of those other fun ones. Um,
Yes.
Taking us way back. But those, I remember when that was first introduced, there was a lot of worry and concern of cheating too. What are you, where are you on that front in terms of that? And maybe, and I think it's mostly like, I want to say language arts teachers that are nervous because they're like, oh, they're going to write everything for them now. We're not going to ever teach them. What are your thoughts around all of that?
I think that it's really important, again, of course, coming from a technology perspective, right? That teachers as well as students should really be aware of what's out there. Because I also think that before that this became the most popular thing that everybody is using, that they didn't know it was there. And
Right?
that kind of goes back to, do you know if the technology that you're utilizing is a pro or a con kind of thing? I think it's also really important that if students are actually pursuing the opportunity to be able to utilize that AI system to get, say, an essay written, they actually did more than the actual writing than they had in the first place, right? Because they still need to ask the question that's going to give them the answer that they want. So I understand how the process of writing essays and the process of making sure that cheating is not happening, which of course I'm significantly against. I mean, that we
Sure.
know that cheating is not acceptable. I think though that the outside learning process is just not recognized by other content area educators because they're not familiar with the technology. Of course, to kind of add to that, College Board is not allowing them to digitally create their essays for the AP tests. So I think that that would be unfortunately a sad awakening for those students who thought that they were going to, fly by without having to worry about really writing documentation that was going to be acceptable.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the other part of this, right? Is how much do schools need to internally reflect on what are we asking kids to do, and what is it that's actually important academically for them to learn. And then, of course, College Board steps in, and everyone's like, "Whoa, okay, we gotta we gotta align with them." But although I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think it's a part of the process is asking those critical questions and putting in the right terms to get the right output, which is really a part of computer science. So, Fran, I want to thank you for joining us. Tell the folks out there, where can we find out more about you and the great work that you're doing?
Oh, well, I am the computer science administrator in the Clark County School District. I am certainly someone who is on Twitter at ITCH ComSci. And I certainly look forward to working with everyone who is interested in more information.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Fran, for being a part of the Let's Talk Computer Science podcast. And thanks again to our friends at Rex Academy for making this podcast possible. Be sure to check out their platform at rex.academy. We all know technology will be a part of our future. And as educators and leaders, it's our role to make sure that all of our students have an opportunity in that future as well. This is Carl Hooker, signing off.